So, which was not a small amount of money back in those days.
Not in that day.
And then this is just a letter from Hugh Howe back to Mr. Holloway, and he's talking about the design of the trail and saying, you know, my original intention was to make the road to the summit 10% with about the same style of drawings as suggested by Mr. Dickey. So he's talking at length about what the design is going to be.
So these people were architects who were working for the state, or surveyors or something like that?
Hugh Howe, who was a surveyor at the time, became a territory surveyor and engineer.
So we may have to summarize a few of these things.
Yes, we're at the end
okay,
here.
So we're getting to the exciting part.
That was March of 1905, and in November of 1905, we have that newspaper article that Dave Brown found at the beginning, where it says, you know, it says Haleakala trial completed, but we know it's trail.
We know what they mean.
Funds, and so Jay Dugan completed the work. And here's just a couple of things. This is just a couple of the quotes from it. Even a stranger may now ride to the Catholic Church at Makawao, and from that as a landmark, follow the finger post to the top and not be under the necessity of taking a guide.
Oh, referring to those finger posts.
And then it says, he talks about the contractor, and he says, cleared out the loose stones to a width of 20 feet. The finger boards are set 1/5 of a mile apart and give the distance on each.
Wow! So it was an early eco tour.
Yeah, and in each and it says, and in between each finger post is a plain guidepost, so that anyone should find his way without difficulty. So certainly this looks like it was very much a public kind of place where people could go.
Now, just, you know, you've walked up there.
Yes, through the discovery process.
Yeah. And is this the kind of place you'd have to be fairly fit to hike this trail for any distance?
As you could probably see a little bit from those photographs, I was quite surprised at what a well-done trail it was. So in 1904 and 1905, when they were redesigning it, they really did a good job. It goes across beautiful land, and of course, Haleakala Ranch has done to their credit, has done a fantastic job of stewarding the land. And they've done a great job of preserving these now historic landmarks, showing where the trail is.
So is there any truth that, you know, if the trail has not been widely used, when did public use sort of stop?
It literally ended. Worth Aiken was a very savvy businessman, because he actually sold his operation, the tour operation, within a few years of the road coming into existence, the Haleakala Crater Road. By this point, it was a national park.
The one that we drive on.
The one that we drive on, and of course, it folded soon thereafter, because you can imagine the novelty was, hey, let's get to the top by a car, because, you know, we're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and we're using a car, which is a really new thing. It'd be kind of like having an iPhone or something. But I think we've gone full circle now. And what we know is a lot of people really would enjoy that experience of getting up there, and this is still something that is important to the state and to the people, not only as a recreational opportunity, but really as an economic opportunity, because that has come full circle as well. People don't necessarily come to a place because, hey, I understand they have a great road that I can drive on. You know, that's not necessarily what you and I would say.
Well,
but if we said, hey, there's a place where we can go take a hike to the top.
But to be truthful, I mean, I think people want to get to the crater, and my understanding is the crater is one of the most visited places in Hawaii. I think it's the most visited place in Maui, and maybe second or third in the state after Pearl Harbor and maybe something else.
Right.
But, so people are driving there, but what I hear what you're saying, that people would also love having an experience of accessing it, you know, in a quiet, sort of more personal way. Like when you walk, you connect with different things than when you drive.
And certainly, you know, I think the selfish motive is for us on Maui. We would certainly enjoy having another trail, and this would certainly be a beautiful one.
Yeah, you know, one thing does come up. I mean, you look at some of the places that they are public and they've been publicly, you know, accessible for a number of years. Or even if they're not public, I look at the petroglyphs up in Olowalu, and because, you know, people sort of stopped living there in the 1950s or so, you know, they didn't have as robust a community there, after the mill closed in the 30s. It seems like just a lot of things were defaced and degraded. I mean, I wonder if this trail would be in as good a shape if it had been open publicly all this time, but very sparsely used, where like no one checked up on it.
Well, and that's a good question, and there's two parts to that. One is that one of the issues is just making sure that the trail gets preserved as public property, because it clearly, we can see the history, really lends itself to that deduction by just about anyone, whether you're a lawyer or not.
But then you see that the question of public use is different.
But the public use is different, and I guess there's a few points on that. One is, I think that there actually is a lot less vandalism than we actually think on some of the trails. And secondly, that's certainly what the state has, would need to put into place as a way to make sure that's protected. We wouldn't want to lose that.
Boy, I wouldn't agree with that. Hiking widely, I mean, just almost everything that's widely accessible is not treated too respectfully, unless there is a konahiki, unless there's someone who's in charge, who is like, looking after things. I mean, it's just sad but true. And I'm a big advocate for public access and public trails. But, you go someplace like Honokawai Valley, where it's access if you go up, with Maui cultural lands and work on the land, and it's pristine, it's beautifully kept, it's like nothing is defaced. But I go up in the trails across the street from me. I mean, geez, there's trash there, and people cutting down ferns and cutting down trees if they think they can make a buck, and growing marijuana, and you name it. People just think, oh, here's a place I can I can get what I need.
I wonder if in some of those cases, because it's not traveled that often, I mean, it's
well, that is possible.
So I guess it certainly is a point, and we don't want to ruin a treasure.
Yes.
But at this point, I would consider it to be, and really this was a trail to be used at a certain level.
The public ownership is important too.
The other thing I would just say on this one is it's not, we're not talking about an environmentally sensitive area, which I think is another thing that's really unique about this one.
It's cow pastures, basically.
And certainly what we saw was that in the old days, it was a highway. And it would be nice to see it, do we have to absolutely baby it? It would be wonderful to have those finger posts and ahus preserved, because they really make, that's part of it that just would be, it would be a shame to see those lost.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the benefits for sure of it having been pretty much on private property all this time and forgotten by most people during that period of time.
So where's the whole process at? Did you take some sort of legal action? Did PATH ask the state to make a determination or something? Where's it at?
We filed a complaint in early 2011 against Haleakala Ranch Company and also against the state. And we're asking for the trail to be open, returned to the public for their use. And of course, we think that the right repository, most likely, in terms of vesting jurisdiction and oversight, those kinds of things would be with the state. So one of the reasons why we've named the state is to say, we don't want you to mothball this and forget about it. We would really want you to make it open and do something with it and do the right thing with it, open it up and find the funds to make it available.
And does PATH see themselves as an organization that might eventually, as a third party, hold title when the state was reluctant or the county was reluctant? Because don't a lot of these things come down to the county says, oh, it's public, and the state has the jurisdiction, and the state says, oh, it's public, and the county has the jurisdiction, and it's like, no one's in charge.
Here for sure, the Highways Act is very clear that the state can't, at least unless there's an agreement, it's very clear the buck stops with the state on this one. It's clearly under HRS 198D, it's with the state, and also under the Highways Act, unless there's a divestiture. So the state has to deal with it. We think that's the right place for it. If we have time, I'll tell you just a couple other things.
Sure, we have 5 minutes or so.
Okay. So after that, the state actually filed a motion to dismiss on some of that we lack standing. We survived that, and we are essentially arguing to the court that based on the facts and the law, that this is a state asset, or at least a public trail where the public has an easement. And that's consistent with actually where the state attorney general has opined to Laura Thielen, the old director of Department of Land and Natural Resources. The other thing that makes this somewhat unique, and I think makes it inclusive for anyone here in Hawaii, is that we filed for certification of the class. As in other words, people have heard the expression of class action, which
Sure.
means a lot of people end up by, maybe not by name, but just by
Incorporated into the,
they become plaintiffs, so to speak, in this case. They become part of the action, and the court granted us our certification. So anyone who has been denied or would want to and would be denied access, who would be a pedestrian or a bike rider or an equestrian, we haven't suggested that we could deal with or would want to deal with vehicular use of that.
So like, what about those dirt bikes?
Well,
They're the ones that would love to get to some of these places.
It's very clear that this is a bike of the kind that you're going to have to go with that. And of course, I think at the end of the day, even on that level, it may be that we will need the state's assistance in order to work out, who uses the trails. And just going back to that issue, there's lots of places, and we can look to the mainland for all sorts of wonderful places where you can go and use trails, and they're being used by multi-users. And by that, I'm thinking usually of horse riders, bike riders, and pedestrians, sometimes not on the same day, sometimes on different portions of the trail. There's different ways that those potential user conflicts have been worked out. And of course, we have a lot of examples here on Maui where all three of those are using the trails pretty well together. I think if you ask your average user out there, folks are pretty much getting along with the horse riders and the bike riders and the pedestrians. So at any rate, at this stage, those are class members. And at this stage, we're also heading towards trial in October. So we're continuing with the trial work and those
something
kinds of
might
things.
be known before Christmas here?
Maybe, depending upon the court calendar and whether it gets moved off or those kinds of things.
Is it a matter of the judge is going to make a decision, or is it the jury? How is it
We've asked
tried?
for a jury demand, and we haven't gotten to that stage where we've actually made the selection yet. It may be by the judge.
Well, that'd be interesting.
And at any rate, I think one of the things is that we would, thank you for letting us share this tonight, because to me, this is just such a unique and interesting historic story.
Yeah, well, we're here to hear community stories, and obviously this is kind of a forgotten one.
It is.
And you were referring to the things that you have, the documents that you have, that the state had never referred to before, were things like the receipts that showed the repairs, and is those are the kind of things that were the obscure documents that kind of paint the picture here that there was quite a bit of public investment in this trail?
Correct, and actually, I'll just put up here, we have a website, pathmaui.org, and this is what you would see if you went to the site.
Can we pull up the feed here for the last minute and show their website?
So if you go to pathmaui.org, what you'll see is a tab at the top that says Haleakala Trail, and you can find a lot of those old documents there so that you can peruse them and check them out, because they really are quite interesting to read.
So if you're a history buff, you can really immerse yourself in this.
Right.
And this took a lot of work, it sounds like, a lot of research in the archives.
We have a fair amount involved, and we had some great researchers, and it's been, what actually is, if you go there, it was a little bit more, it was also a lot of work just to put the story together and connect all the dots, although there were so many documents that it was pretty easy to connect the dots. But at any rate, you can find a short synopsis of the story. You can read the entire complaint under that tab, Haleakala Trail, and you can read about some of the other things we're doing. And we, of course, if people, at one point, some folks were emailing us about Skyline Trail, some things that were happening up there, possibly with the closure.
Yes.
We also want to be kind of like a clearinghouse for those issues and be someone that can go out.
pathmaui.org.
Pathmaui.org.
Good. Well, thank you for a very interesting conversation, and I'm sure our folks at home are going, I never knew that. So we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you.